Well, just because I have nothing better to upload, and I don't know if anyone's checked out my favorite albums playlist, but in case you're wondering why I picked the albums I picked, and if you're wondering if it's an accurate representation of what I listen to, well, I'm just gonna go through all the albums in that playlist and explain why I like them so much, and just pretty much I'm just going to be praising them the whole time and just trying to recommend them to you to get them to check them out. But, so, in no particular order, well, actually, I'm going to save my favorite one for last, but before that, in no particular order, is Rush Hemispheres, their sixth studio album. And for me, this is the only Rush. I think this is their best album just because it's the only album of theirs I feel that has where every single track is a solid track that is worth listening to all the way through and you shouldn't skip it. Like every other album, there's at least one song, even their greats like 2112 or Moving Pictures, like you can find one or two songs that you'll just be like, nah, that isn't that good, I'll skip it. But I mean, Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres, great song. Like, all the sections are great, even though the concept is a little abstract and a little too pretentious for its own good. It still makes you think, and it's still a good story about part after the pilot from Cygnus X1 Book 1 gets sucked into the black hole. He dies and then becomes a spirit and has to go between Apollo and Dionysus, and they basically make this big agreement, and it's just a mess. But at least it's awesome music. Circumstances, great song. The Trees, great song. La Via Strangiato, awesome song. And the album isn't that long. It's only about 36 minutes in length. So if you want to check it out, I definitely recommend it, even if you're not a Rush fan or a Prog fan. It's their most worthwhile one, I think. And this is the last epic 20-minute song album they ever did. So it's a landmark for all the Rush fans out there. My second album that I'm going to show you, actually, Dark Side of the Moon was in that playlist, but as sad as it sounds, I can't find my Dark Side of the Moon CD anywhere. But I mean, in 10 seconds, it's really great. All the songs are awesome. The beginning, middle, end, it's all just fantastic. You can't go wrong with it. It's one of those perfect albums. It's just like you can't change it in a way that would make it better. And the same could be said for this album, Gorillaz Demon Days. And as you can see, this case is really beat up because when I first heard Feel Good Inc., just like on the radio or on MTV or wherever I heard it, I was just blown away because it was just this unique sound and it didn't sound like anything on the pop charts at the time, and it was just, I had to get this, and when I listened through the whole album, I was just blown away. This was the first album I was truly infatuated with. When I was a little 10-year-old kid running around going to elementary school, I had this in my backpack every day for months, and I listened to it on the bus every day with a portable CD player. Remember portable CD players? Oh man, those were great. The case is really beat up from being in my backpack the whole time, but the disc is still in remarkably good shape. And it still plays perfectly, doesn't skip or anything. The album booklet is really kind of fallen apart since I've opened it up to show people so many times. But again, it's just one of those perfect albums. You can't really change it in a way that would make it better. I mean, if you did, it would just make the entire experience different. Like, the whole album just has this really unique sound to it, and it's just, I would have to do a whole track by track review to give it full justice, but in short, if this album has everything, you should definitely check this album out because there's something for everyone. If you like rock, it has rock. If you like pop, it has pop. If you like rap, it has rap. If you want more alternative or experimental stuff, it has alternative and experimental stuff. A couple songs sound like jazzy at parts, and the last two albums are essentially like gospel songs. And by the way, the last two songs are just the perfect way to end this album. They're just so amazing and so beautiful. And I recently re-listened to this album just to make sure I wasn't blinded by nostalgia, and it still holds up. It's still a great album. Definitely one of the best albums to come out of the 2000s decade, in my opinion. But if you look up the lyrics are you can barely understand them, mostly because of the muddy production quality. And again, I kind of like the muddy production quality on this album because it gives it a really unique sound that, like, I don't know, it just gives it flavor. But anyways, the lyrics on this album are just so depressing. Just look up the lyrics. They're just, oh man, I never knew what they were talking about. Now that I know, it's just like, ah. But yeah, definitely one of my all-time favorite albums right here, and you should definitely listen to it beginning to end if you haven't done so already. It's just awesome. Moving on. This one is like a tie between Tenacious D's debut album and Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny. Now, I'm a big Jack Black fan. I love Jack Black's movies, and that's how I got into Tenacious D. And their music is hilarious. I should start with this album first, their debut album, since it came first. It's just, a lot of their songs are just about these two guys who haven't made it big. They're just playing clubs, they're just two friends living together, and they're just playing their two acoustic guitars and just having fun doing it, writing all these silly, ridiculous songs. And as someone who plays a lot of guitar and writes a lot of music, like, I can definitely relate to this. And also, I've jammed with a lot of people, so I know what it's like to be in all the different skits they're talking about. Like, the one-note song. I've trolled people to doing that. Like, hey, I got this idea for a song, and just, I don't know. It's more a personal decision for me. I don't know how. I can't really say for sure how objectively good this album is, but I can definitely listen to it beginning to end no problem, just because I have a pretty wide range of sense of humor, and it's just also their songs, especially the songs where they try to sound really epic, like Wonder Boy and Tribute, and City Hall is probably my favorite song from this album. They make you imagine just all these stories that go on. Oh, and that reminds me, going back to Demon Days, whenever I listen to this album, I always picture a little story going on, and each track has its own characters and like a different thing that goes on. It's kind of similar, kind of different to the music videos. More different than similar, but still, it's pretty neat. I don't know, I was just like daydreaming as I was listening to it, and that's what happens. And the same could be said for this. Actually, more so for the Pick of Destiny, because, well, I mean, this album is essential. It is the soundtrack to the movie, and the movie is the story. It's just sometimes I just think there should be a different order of things. Like for me, like in the movie Master Exploder, they're sitting in the car driving to the museum to get the pick of destiny, and Jack daydreams about how awesome they're going to be with the pick, and that's where Master Exploder comes in. I think this song should have been saved for after Car Chase City and before Bleezelboss, so they actually do get a chance to play the club, and that's the song they play to wow everyone, and that's what they do to pay all their rent. But they're still gonna battle Satan in Bleezelboss, the final showdown, and I guess get him to pay more rent anyway, so they have more pocket money, I guess. But these are just little things. I mean, at one point I knew the entire album. I could just sing along to the whole album. I knew every word. Just every song is a great song. Even the little interlude tracks, I still know all the words to all the different skits and stuff. And by the way, if you don't like the first album just because there's too many skits, and I gotta admit, sometimes it can stop the momentum of the album sometimes. It's still a really fun listen though. This one has very minimal skits. They're just like at the beginning of a couple songs, and they aren't really skits so much as they are just audio taken from the movie. But yeah, these are both definitely really good albums. By the way, Rise of the Phoenix, it's a good album from Tenacious D, but in my opinion, it just doesn't hold up compared to the first two. I mean, they're probably gonna release another album pretty soon, so we at least have that to look forward to. And I want to see them live at some point, so I know they put on a great show. Okay, these last four albums are all from the same artist, and yes, as you may have noticed, they are all from Buckethead. First, let's start with the first chronologically speaking, Colma. I was thinking of adding Buckethead Land in here since Buckethead Land is just a really fun listen, but it's a very flawed album. There's a lot of stuff I would have changed if I were making it with Bucket, if I could go back in time and somehow work my way through the ranks to work with him on it. But this album, it just has its own unique sound. The guitar tone is just this really unique, dry, neutral sounding tone that's very restful. This album is great study music, by the way. If you're doing homework and you need to help focus, this is great study music. It's also great just relaxation music, really. I don't want to say meditation music because most of the tracks have drums, and the tracks with drums they're a little too busy to meditate to. But something like Watching the Boats with My Dad or Wondering or Ghost Part 2 is good to meditate to if you're into that. If I were to do anything different with this album, I would just rearrange track listings. Like, I would put Lone Sal Bug after Sanctum, and Sanctum would be before Wishing Well, and then just basically I would have restful stuff with drums here, and then the more energetic stuff in the middle, and then the calm guitar-only stuff with no drums at the end, which is kind of how the album is arranged anyway. And by the way, the solo on Machete is one of Buckethead's most underrated guitar solos. It's so epic. And he probably improvised it too. It sounds improvised, but still, it's just really awesome. Not really much else to say about this. I mean, I mean, it's just one of those flawless, at least as flawless as you can make it albums. Just like, for what it is, if you tried changing it, it wouldn't, it just wouldn't be the same experience. Like, there's nothing, at least I could think of doing to it, aside from rearranging the track listing to make it better. So, I'd still recommend this. I personally like it a lot. I don't know what you might think of it. Okay, moving into Population Override, skipping ahead about 7 years in his discography. This album, if you love blues, it's got blues. If you love funk, it's got funk. If you love rock, it's got rock. No lyrics, it's all just instrumental, guitar, drums, bass, keyboard. I shouldn't really say bass because the bass in this album is very minimal and it's just like overdubbed after the jam sessions that they used to record this. Like the first track, Unrestrained Growth, has kind of a weird bass line, but in the context of the song it works really well. Too Many Humans it's one of Buckethead's best songs. Same with Population Override. That song's really underrated. That song's just awesome, especially like the last 2 minutes, the way it builds and then just calamity strikes. And supposedly there's a concept behind this album, but like on the website and in the album booklet, they're very vague about it. But I think what the concept is too many humans, there's just too many humans on Earth, the Earth is overflowing, and eventually there's this big catastrophe that wipes out all the humans, like Unrestrained Growth, the human population's growing, too many humans, there's too many humans. Population Override, the population is getting so big and it's building up to this big calamity that's about to ensue. Humans vanish. That's when the disaster happens, or it's right after the disaster that happens. The cruel reality of nature is like, I guess, the survivors looking at the aftermath, or whatever new alien or robot race is looking at the aftermath. And then the next couple tracks are Earth rebuilding under this new civilization of people. And, like, the Earth is healing, they're, like, making clones, and it's a new, I guess, superhuman race. And then ... is, like, the epilogue of the album. And I always just imagined that as, like, the end credits. Because, again, this album, there's, again, a little story that I imagine whenever I listen to it. It's essentially what I just described to you. And whenever I listen to this album, the movie, so to speak, if my thoughts were translated into a movie, the movie ends with Superhuman, and then ... is just the end credits, because, I mean, ... is a nice song, kind of an underrated Buckethead song in my opinion, but it doesn't really stylistically fit in with the rest of the album. It's not really, I mean, it's just kind of there, tagged on to the end, and I actually kind of like it. I do like that song. It's just, within the context of the album, it just feels a little shoehorned in, but again, I personally can't think of anything I would do to help improve this album. It's just, again, I don't really want to say it's a perfect album, but it's definitely an awesome album. Like I said, if you love rock, if you love blues, if you love funk, especially instrumental, all of the above, definitely check this out. It's a great listen. And if you're looking for some new inspiration, especially if you're a keyboard player, because the keyboard playing on this album by Travis Dickerson is really great. Skipping all the way to Pike 41 Wishes, Buckethead's signature right there. I got number 196 of the signed albums. I have no idea when he's going to release the standard edition, but at least I got, this is one of 10 signed Buckethead albums I have, by the way. For a mellow Buckethead album, it's relatively diverse. Like, the first track is really happy, the second track is a little somber, the third track is just really relaxing, and then the last track is just really quiet, sparse, and ambient. The second and third tracks are really good for studying if you want good study music, at least for me personally. But again, there's not a whole lot I can say about this. It's just a really nice listen. It's just something, this is just like the best album I can think of to put on to just like sit back and relax. Like especially when I travel, I like to put this on. Like if I'm on a bus or on a plane, this is a good album to put on. Not much to say about it, I just personally really like it. Okay, drum roll. Time to reveal my favorite album, and I already unveiled it in my Buckethead CD collection video. It's Pike 13. Now, first things first, this is the first time Buckethead ever publicly released a picture of himself unmasked. There he is in the yellow shirt, and the guy he's hugging is his father, and this picture was taken when he was a few months sick, and Buckethead's dad actually died about a year after this album was released. So, this not just, even without the story attached to this album, it's just a really good album to make you think. And that's what, at least in my opinion, that's what good art is supposed to do. It makes you think. Because even if I just gave you this album and didn't tell you anything about it, like, all you would see is just this picture. You take out the disc. It's a blank disc. Nothing on it. You look on the back. There's no track listing. And you're given these 33 just outpouring of soul minutes. Like, if you want to hear Buckethead make money, listen to Soothsayer and Jordan. If you want to hear Buckethead play guitar, listen to Population Override, Coma, or whatever else. If you want to listen to Buckethead attempt to put his soul on a compact disc, this is the album right here. It's just, I don't know what it is with this album that makes me just really love it so much. It's definitely one of the more unique sounding albums of his. I want to say it's probably just the innocence. Because one of the reasons I love Buckethead is that he's always approached music like a child. Buckethead is essentially just a giant man-child, but just, it's hard to explain, but just, for people to get the full effect from this, whenever I recommend this to people, I just tell them, wait until it's dark out. Just wait until it's nighttime. Close all the blinds on your windows. Lock the door. Turn your phone and computer off. And just listen to this. And also, the picture on the front, if anything, it should help you just think about the ones you love. And again, a story, like a little story plays whenever I listen to this album, but unlike the other stories I get in my mind, which are kind of comical, kind of like and have happy endings and stuff, at least in my opinion, like the story that goes on in my head is just like a really sad one. It's a frustrating one. It's like there are momentary parts where the story gets happy and lighthearted, but for the most part it's just like really just kind of depressing. And I mean, not all art has to be butterflies and cumulus clouds. Like some of the best art should be disturbing. It should make you think about not good things. And just I just I can't even I just don't even know what to say anymore about it. It's just an amazing listen. It really is. The only thing I can really say about it is something my friend told me after I showed him this album, and of course after he followed all the instructions I just told you to, like in the dark, no distractions and stuff. Just, you will feel every emotion listening to this album. You're gonna feel joy. You're gonna feel anger. You're gonna feel sadness. You're gonna feel the feeling of being lost and then finding your way again, and being lost and finding your way. The feeling of anxiety, nervousness, the feeling of peace, rest, the feeling of mourning, and then coming to terms with it. It's, well, that last part might just be part of my story, but I don't know, it's just the one of the purest musics I've ever gotten my hands on. Like, I remember during one of my concert reviews, I ranted about the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and the only reason I didn't list this is just because, well, I wasn't talking about whole albums. And I don't really want to give too much away about the content of the album since I don't want to spoil it, but basically, the first 5 tracks are build-up for the 6th track, and the 6th track is like the climax of the story, or whatever it is that you want to think of it as. And then the last 3 tracks are more or less the resolution, or actually some events go on that pertain to the story. The 8th track is more the resolution. The 7th track, I feel like stuff is still being dealt with, but I'm just ranting at this point. And also, the first track and the last track are the same thing. So, whenever I listen to it, the first track is like the opening credits, or like the opening sequence, and then the last track is like the end credits. And I kind of like how it's structured like that, so it can, if you have the CD looped, you could go, like, it would seamlessly go beginning to end over and over and over. Definitely find this and follow my instructions and listen to it, because it's so beautiful. It really is. Well, in essence, those were my favorite albums, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of my choices and what your favorite albums are, and I'll just see what you have to say, and thanks for watching.